My name is Cora Diaz. I'm 38 years old. I own my home, run a small consulting business, and until recently, I believed I was a woman who trusted logic more than fear. For the last 3 years, I was with Cole Parker. When we met, he felt effortless, calm, grounded, the kind of man who listened instead of waiting for his turn to speak. We moved in together 18 months ago, and for a while, life felt settled, comfortable in a way that didn't scare me. Then, about 6 months ago, something shifted. It didn't start with cheating. It started with a name, Liana. At first, it was harmless. Liana thought my presentation was solid. Liana helped me clean up that client mess. She was a colleague, a teammate, a convenience. I didn't question it. I have male colleagues I talk about too. That's normal. But then the frequency changed. Her name slipped into every conversation like punctuation. Casual, constant, familiar, and the context shifted with it. Texts started coming late, 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. Cole's phone, once forgotten on the counter, was suddenly always in his hand, tilted away from me. Screen dimmed, a small smile before he typed back. Then came the late nights. Once a month became once a week. Once a week became twice. He'd come home energized, smelling faintly of wine, not stale office coffee. "You wouldn't believe the fires we had to put out," he'd say. Liana and I had to stay late. The first time I really felt it, the crack, was my birthday. I'd bought concert tickets months in advance, an artist I loved. I told everyone I was excited. I planned dinner after. At 5 p.m., my phone rang. "Cora, I'm so sorry," Cole said. "There's a huge client crisis. Liana and I have to stay late and redo the proposal." Traffic roared in the background. "Are you at the office?" I asked. He exhaled sharply. "I'm in an Uber heading back from a late meeting." "Why? Do you not trust me?" I swallowed the question that wanted to come out. I ate the cost of the tickets. He came home after midnight, apologetic, but not guilty. The moment that changed everything came at a friend's barbecue. Cole checked his phone and laughed. Not a polite chuckle, a full, unfiltered laugh. "What's so funny?" someone asked. "Oh," he said casually, waving it off. "Just a work thing. You wouldn't get it." The way he said it, that line between us, was the loudest sound in the yard. That night I spoke calmly. I told him the texting, the late nights, the inside jokes made me uncomfortable, that it felt like he was prioritizing another relationship over ours. He looked at me like I'd asked him to explain gravity. "Cora," he sighed, "you're being paranoid." Then he said it. "She's just my work wife." The words landed wrong, heavy, intimate. "I'm your partner," I said quietly. "Why do you need a work wife?" He rolled his eyes. "Every guy has one. It's harmless. You need to trust me more." And something inside me went cold. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I smiled slightly. "You're right," I said. "I need to be more trusting." The relief on his face was instant. That night, he fell asleep content. I didn't. By morning, I had stopped being emotional and started being strategic. The next morning, Cole was in the shower, and I was in the kitchen pretending to scroll mindlessly on my phone like any other Saturday. But my mind wasn't scrolling. It was mapping. For weeks, I'd been living in a fog where I kept asking myself the same useless questions. Am I overreacting? Is this just insecurity? Am I about to destroy something good because I can't handle normal work friendships? Cole had handed me a role, the paranoid girlfriend, and every time I defended myself, I felt like I was proving him right. So I stopped defending. I opened my laptop, not for relationship advice, not for how to communicate better, not for another article that would tell me to use I statements. I searched for private investigators, not the shady kind you imagine in movies, real firms, licensed, reviewed, specializing in discrete partner investigations. I found one with consistently high ratings and a simple description that felt like it was written for people like me. Evidence, documentation, clarity. I clicked the contact form and typed one sentence. "I need to confirm whether my boyfriend is having an affair with a coworker." My finger hovered over send for half a second, then I pressed it. By lunchtime, I had a reply. A phone consultation, that afternoon. I took the call in my car, parked in the far corner of a shopping center lot, the kind of place where no one looks twice at a woman sitting alone with a phone at her ear. Her name was Sarah Whitman. Her voice was calm, precise, and professional. No fake sympathy, no dramatic questions, no moral lecture. She asked me to explain the situation, so I did. I told her about the sudden secrecy, the late-night texting, the smell of wine, the constant name-dropping, the concert tickets, the barbecue comment, The way Cole had said work wife like it was cute. "And what do you want from me?" Sarah asked. I appreciated that question. It wasn't emotional, it was practical. "I want facts," I said. "Not theories, not vibes. Facts." "And what will you do with those facts?" she asked, voice steady. I understood what she was checking for. If I sounded unstable, revenge-hungry, impulsive, she'd end the call. So I told her the truth. "If they're just friends," I said, "I'll apologize to him and live with being wrong." There was a pause, small but noticeable. "And if they're not?" she asked. "Then I need proof that can't be argued with," I said. "Proof that can't be spun into me being insecure. I need something clean and undeniable so I can leave without being dragged through a debate." "Understood," Sarah replied, like she'd heard it 1,000 times. She explained rates, surveillance windows, what was legal, what wasn't, what they could document. I paid a hefty retainer, quietly, using my business credit card, not the shared account Cole sometimes used for household expenses. Then I gave her everything. Cole's full name, photo, work address, car details, and Liana, because by then I'd seen enough. Her full name had appeared on a company email once when Cole left his laptop open and I walked behind him at the wrong time. It was burned into my memory in a way that made me hate my own brain for keeping it. "Liana Brooks," I said. Sarah asked for patterns, days. "Tuesdays and Thursdays," I answered immediately, because that detail had been repeating like a ticking clock for months. Sarah didn't react. She just wrote. "We'll start tomorrow," she said. "You'll receive updates through a secure channel." When I ended the call, I didn't feel sad. I felt something sharper, like I'd finally stepped out of the role Cole had assigned me. That night, he kissed my forehead, relaxed and smug, like he'd won. "You okay?" he asked, tone gentle, the kind of gentle that used to feel like love and now felt like control. I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I'm just trusting you more." His eyes softened with relief. "That's my girl." And that's when I understood something that made my stomach clench. The moment he believed I'd accepted the work wife story, it was like he'd been handed a permission slip. Over the next 2 weeks, his behavior didn't improve. It escalated. The late nights became more frequent. The phone was glued to his palm, angled away, the screen dimming the second I entered the room. He stopped even pretending to be subtle. He'd sit beside me on the couch, thumb flying over his screen, and when I'd glance over, he'd tilt it like it was muscle memory. Once he laughed softly at something and didn't even look up. "Liana?" I asked lightly, like I didn't care. He grinned. "Yeah, she's ridiculous." The way he said it made it sound like a private little world I wasn't invited into. I kept the mask on. That was the hardest part. Living with him while knowing a professional was watching him. I had to act normal, cheerful, curious. "How was your day?" I'd ask. And he would launch into stories, long, detailed stories about him and Liana, the dynamic duo. "Liana and I crushed the strategy meeting," he'd say. We were literally finishing each other's sentences. I nodded, smiling like a supportive girlfriend, while my stomach tied itself into knots. At night, he'd stumble in smelling like wine, talk fast, like he was riding some kind of adrenaline high. And sometimes, this part made me feel like I was swallowing glass. He'd say things like, "You'd love her, honestly." That line felt like a slap, because it wasn't just betrayal. It was him trying to fold her into our life like she belonged there. Then, on a Friday afternoon, I got the first update from Sarah, a password-protected email. My hands shook just a little as I opened it in my home office with the door locked. The report was clean and detached. Times, dates, locations. Tuesday. Cole and Liana left the office at 5:30 p.m. together. They didn't go separate ways. They got into his car and drove to an upscale downtown bistro. Not a place you choose for a quick work meeting. Sarah's team documented them ordering a bottle of expensive wine, sitting side by side in a booth, not across from each other. And then there were photos. Grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough that I felt my throat tighten. Cole's hand on her thigh, her leaning in close, laughing in a way that looked intimate. Thursday was worse. They went to a dim cocktail lounge across town. Sarah's note said, "Extremely physically affectionate." The photos backed it up. Cole's arm around her waist, her head resting against his shoulder like it belonged there. And then, timestamped 10:17 p.m., a photo outside the entrance. A kiss. Not quick, not accidental, not friendly. A kiss that said they had done this before. I stared at the screen, waiting for a wave of grief to knock me over. It didn't. Instead, something inside me hardened like cooling metal. Then I reached the part Sarah had flagged. Liana Brooks wears a wedding ring. Sarah had run her name. Married. 2 kids. A house in the suburbs. So Cole wasn't just betraying me. He was helping a woman betray a family. And that made it worse in a way I didn't expect, because it stripped away every excuse he might try to hide behind. This wasn't confusing feelings. This was a choice, repeated, comfortable. I called Sarah. My voice was steady. "This is good," I said, "but it's not enough." "What more do you need?" she asked. "She can still spin it," I said, thinking out loud. "He can say it was a mistake, a moment, a misunderstanding." I stared at the photo again. I need something that can't be interpreted. I need the nail in the coffin. There was a small pause. "That kind of evidence can take more time and resources," Sarah said carefully. "I don't care about the cost," I replied. "Do what you need to do." Then I added, because the thought had been growing teeth in my head. "I also need information about her husband, name, address, anything." "Understood," Sarah said again. That night, Cole came home humming, like a man who believed he was untouchable. He told me he and Liana had worked late again, but they'd had a breakthrough. He said his boss was probably going to give them both a bonus. He looked me straight in the eyes while he lied. And for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't fear, or sadness, or doubt. I felt pity, because he had no idea he was living on borrowed time. His world was a house of cards, and I was standing very still, waiting for the right moment to breathe. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of pretending I was the calm, reformed girlfriend who had finally learned her lesson. Cole grew more relaxed with every day. It was almost fascinating, watching how quickly someone settles into comfort when they believe they've regained control. He stopped over-explaining, stopped checking his tone, stopped pretending his phone wasn't more important than the room we were sitting in. Every Tuesday and Thursday followed the same script. "There's a fire at work. Liana and I have to handle it. Only we know the client well enough." Sometimes I wondered if he even heard himself anymore, or if the lie had become so routine it no longer registered as one. I smiled. I nodded. I played my part. Inside, I was counting. The final package arrived on a Wednesday morning. Not by email. Not by secure upload. A courier walked into my office building and asked for Cora Diaz by name. He handed me a thick manila envelope. No return address. Just one word stamped in the corner. Confidential. I thanked him, closed my office door, and sat down. My hands were perfectly steady as I broke the seal. Inside was a detailed report and a stack of glossy, high-resolution photographs that made my breath stall for just a second. Sarah's team had been thorough, ruthlessly so. The report outlined a pattern. Every Thursday at 4:20 p.m., like clockwork, Cole and Liana left the office together. Not late, early. They drove to a mid-range hotel off the highway. Clean, respectable, forgettable. The kind of place people choose when they don't want to be noticed. Cole paid in cash. The first photos showed them at the check-in desk. Liana glanced around nervously. Cole didn't. There were shots of them in the hallway, her hand tucked casually into the back pocket of his jeans, his keycard in his other hand. They looked relaxed, happy. That was the part that hurt, not in a sharp way, but in a dull, hollow one. They weren't sneaking like guilty people. They were moving like this was normal. The last set of photos were the ones I had asked for, the ones that would end all debates, taken from an adjacent room before the curtains were fully drawn. Clear, undeniable. There was no romance left in them, no fantasy. Just proof. I didn't linger. I didn't need to. I placed the photos back in the envelope carefully, like handling evidence at a crime scene. Then I turned to the final section of the report. Michael Brooks, Liana's husband, stay-at-home father, 2 children, a boy and a girl, active in school events, PTA meetings, weekend soccer games. Sarah had included a link to his public social media profile. I clicked it. Photos filled the screen. Smiling kids covered in face paint. Family barbecues. Holiday photos where Liana leaned into Michael, his arm around her like he believed it belonged there. One caption from just a few months earlier made my stomach flip. So grateful to have this man by my side, my rock. I closed the tab. That was when my plan stopped being theoretical. It crystallized. I didn't want a confrontation where Cole cried, lied, minimized, blamed me for pushing him away. I didn't want screaming or theatrics. I wanted the truth to land where it mattered. And Michael deserved it more than anyone. I went to an office supply store nowhere near my usual routines. I bought a plain manila envelope, stamps, white printer paper. Back at my office, I laid the photographs out on my desk. I chose carefully. Not the most graphic ones. Not the ones that would feel cruel. I chose the photos that told a story without explanation. The hotel check-in, the kiss outside the lounge. One clear shot inside the hotel room that left no room for doubt. Then I typed a single paragraph. No emotion, no signature. Michael, you don't know me, but I believe you deserve the truth. These photos were taken last Thursday. Your wife told people she was working late. That was it. I didn't justify myself. I didn't explain. Facts don't need apologies. I addressed the envelope using the verified home address Sarah had provided. Then I drove to a post office in another county. I dropped the envelope into a blue collection box without looking back. The fuse was lit. That night, I came home and began the next phase, packing. I didn't throw anything. I didn't break anything. This wasn't about anger. I carefully emptied Cole's dresser, his side of the closet, his bathroom shelf, clothes folded, shoes paired, belts rolled. I labeled boxes neatly and stacked them in the spare bedroom. When I closed the door, it felt ceremonial. For the next 2 days, I waited. Cole went about his life like nothing was wrong. He talked about weekend plans, about a possible promotion, about a trip he thought we'd take soon. I watched him with a strange sense of distance, like observing someone through glass. Saturday afternoon, I was in the garage reorganizing tools when my phone started vibrating. Once, twice, then nonstop. Cole. I ignored the first call, then the second. Then the text began flooding in. Call me. Now. We need to talk. What did you do? Answer me, Cora. What did you do? That last message told me everything. The envelope had arrived. The house of cards had started to fall. I didn't respond. I just sat there in the quiet, phone in my hand. And for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. The truth was no longer just mine to carry. Cole didn't come home until after midnight. I knew he wouldn't. Men like him always needed time after the fantasy shattered. Time to scramble, to assign blame, to decide which version of the truth might still save them. I was sitting in the living room when the front door finally opened. Not pacing, not crying, just reading a book. The man who stepped inside looked like someone I barely recognized. His face was pale and blotchy, eyes bloodshot, jaw tight like it was holding together something that wanted to crack. What did you do? He demanded, voice already shaking. I slid my bookmark between the pages and closed the book slowly. I'm not sure what you mean, I said evenly. Don't do that, he snapped. Don't pretend. Michael knows. He has pictures. Liana called me screaming. Her entire life just blew up. I waited. Silence is powerful when you let it stretch. How did he get those photos? Cole pressed, pacing now. Who took them? I stood up. I told you I needed to be more trusting, I said. So I trusted a professional to find the truth. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His mouth opened slightly, closed again. You had us followed? He whispered. I had you followed, I corrected. She was just part of the story. His anger flared fast, sharp, desperate. You ruined everything, he said. You destroyed her marriage, her kids. Do you have any idea what you've done? I looked at him, really looked. You destroyed that marriage, I said quietly. I just turned on the lights. The fight drained out of him all at once. He sank onto the edge of the couch, head in his hands. My life is over, he muttered. No, I replied. The version of your life built on lies is. I gestured toward the hallway. Your things are packed. I want you out by tomorrow evening. He looked up sharply. You can't just kick me out. This is my house, I said. You moved in. You're leaving. The argument that followed was exhausting in the way all predictable arguments are. He cried. He begged. He tried anger again. Then guilt. Then promises. He said it was a mistake. Then he said it wasn't serious. Then he said I'd been distant. I let him talk. When he finally realized none of it was working, his voice dropped. I have nowhere to go, he said. I met his eyes. Call your work wife, I said. The words landed hard. He flinched. She won't answer, he admitted quietly. Michael kicked her out. Froze the accounts. He's blaming me. I nodded. Tomorrow, I repeated. He slept on the couch. The next morning, he called his parents. His father came that afternoon with a truck. Neither of them looked at me. I didn't need them to. When Cole drove away for the last time, boxes stacked in the back, I felt nothing dramatic. Just relief. The silence in the house felt earned. Over the next weeks, the fallout rippled outward. Michael filed for divorce. With photographic evidence, there was no room for denial. He got the house, primary custody, a favorable settlement. Liana's image at work collapsed just as fast. Michael filed a formal complaint with their company. An internal investigation followed. Cole was fired for cause. Violation of company policy, inappropriate workplace relationship. Liana resigned a week later under pressure she couldn't withstand. Their fantasy burned quickly once exposed to daylight. Cole tried calling me once more. I didn't answer. My lawyer sent a formal notice terminating cohabitation and barring further contact. 4 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Cole was living in a small apartment across town, struggling to find work. Liana had moved back in with her parents. Her attempts to frame herself as a victim never gained traction. Truth has a way of shrinking lies until there's nowhere left to stand. And in the quiet aftermath, I reclaimed my life. I changed the locks, rearranged the furniture. The house felt like mine again. The cold, strategic part of me that had taken over slowly receded. But it left me with something valuable: clarity. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't confrontation, it's action. I never wanted revenge. I wanted truth. And once truth was delivered, everything else followed naturally. 4 months have passed since the day I dropped that envelope into the mailbox. Time doesn't heal everything, but it does clarify what was real and what was performance. The first few weeks after Cole left were quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar. Not lonely, just empty. Like a room after a storm where the furniture is still standing, but the air has changed. I didn't miss him. What I missed, briefly, was the version of myself who believed trust alone could carry a relationship. The woman who thought patience was the same thing as loyalty. That woman didn't live here anymore. Legally, everything was clean. My lawyer sent the formal notice. Cole didn't contest it. He didn't have the energy or leverage to fight. He faded the way people do when their narrative collapses and no one is left to defend it. I heard updates through distant channels. Michael finalized the divorce. Liana lost custody time she never expected to lose. Cole's professional reputation followed him farther than he thought it would. Consequences are like that. They don't scream. They travel. As for me, I reclaimed my space deliberately. I rearranged the living room, donated things that held memories I didn't need to revisit, repainted one wall just because I could. The house stopped feeling like a shared investment. It became a refuge again. Friends asked how I stayed so calm through all of it. The truth is, I wasn't calm. I was resolved. I had spent months doubting myself, shrinking my instincts, apologizing for discomfort that was actually intuition doing its job. When I stopped talking and started acting, everything became simpler. I didn't expose lies out of spite. I exposed them because truth deserves daylight. Cole once told me I needed to be more trusting. He was right, just not in the way he meant. I trusted facts, I trusted evidence, I trusted myself. And that trust carried me out of the fire without ever having to touch the flames.